Okay, let's jump in. Globally, something like 47 million people are living with Alzheimer's. That's a huge number.
It really is. And here in Italy, you mentioned it's about 1 in 10 seniors. It hits close to home for many.
Definitely. And while those statistics can feel a bit daunting, we're here to focus on what you can do. This deep dive is all about being proactive, right? Taking steps now for your brain health.
Exactly. The sources you shared, mostly from that pharmacist focused on naturopathy, they really emphasize this idea of, actively taking care of our cognitive function.
All right.
And our goal today is really to pull out the key pieces from that material. We want to look at the supplements, the vitamins, lifestyle tweaks, basically give you the actionable stuff.
Think of it as your quick guide to the really important strategies discussed. So, first up, the sources seem to consistently point towards omega-3s. Big topic.
Huge topic, yeah. And for good reason. They're highlighted as really potent anti-inflammatories.
And inflammation in the brain is a major factor in neurodegeneration.
It seems to be, yes. Not just general inflammation, but often this sort of chronic low-level inflammation. Sometimes they talk about microglia activation, these immune cells in the brain. Omega-3s can kind of help calm that down.
Okay, so calming inflammation. What else?
Well, they also improve blood fluidity. Basically, make your blood flow a bit smoother.
Which means more oxygen gets to the brain.
Exactly. And our brain cells, our neurons, they use a ton of oxygen, so better delivery is crucial.
Makes sense.
Plus, there's a specific omega-3 DHA docosahexaenoic acid. It's actually a building block for the neuron membranes. It, physically protects them.
Wow. And the source mentions something about eating fish?
Yeah, there's research suggesting that eating fish, a few times a week could potentially lower the risk of senile dementia significantly, like maybe around 60%.
60%. That's pretty compelling just from diet.
It really shows how powerful food choices can be. It also touches on that omega-6 to omega-3 balance.
Ah, yes, the balance. We tend to get too much omega-6 in modern diets, don't we?
We often do, yeah. Lots of processed foods are high in omega-6s, and historically, our diets had a much, much closer ratio. So the idea is to consciously increase omega-3s to sort of counterbalance that.
And if you go the supplement route?
Quality matters. Look for ones that mention things like molecular distillation. It's a purification process.
Good tip. Okay, moving on. What about B vitamins? They seem important too.
Definitely. A whole family of important nutrients. Thiamine B1, for example, is vital for nerve health.
And the sources linked low thiamine to certain diets?
Yeah, things like diets high in refined carbs or heavy alcohol use, both known risk factors for cognitive issues, can actually lower your thiamine levels. So there's a potential connection there.
Interesting link. What about B6 and B12? They get mentioned a lot.
Absolutely critical. B6 helps make neurotransmitters the brain's chemical messengers. And B12, well, it's essential for maintaining the myelin sheath.
The protective coating around nerve fibers.
Exactly. It helps signals travel efficiently. There was even a study mentioned where B12 supplements seem to reduce brain shrinkage atrophy in older adults who already had some mild cognitive impairment.
Really? Reduced shrinkage. That's wow.
Yeah, it raises interesting questions about nutritional support. And low B12 is often linked with high homocysteine levels.
Homocysteine. That sounds bad.
Elevated levels are considered a risk factor for cognitive decline. Yeah. It just shows how these different biochemical bits are all connected.
Right. Okay. So we have fats, B vitamins. What about antioxidants, vitamins E and C?
Big ones for brain protection.
Yeah.
A lot of the damage in Alzheimer's and dementia seems to come from free radicals attacking the neuron membranes. Oxidative stress, they call it.
Like cellular rust.
Kind of, yeah. It's
right.
Uncontrolled oxidation damaging things. So antioxidants like vitamin E, which is fat-soluble, good for protecting those fatty membranes, and vitamin C, water-soluble, works elsewhere in the cell. They help neutralize those damaging free radicals.
And there was a study on this, too.
Yes, a 2004 study, I think in Archives of Neurology. It followed people over 65 and found that those getting medium to high amounts of both C and E had about a 3-fold lower risk of developing Alzheimer's over 2 years.
3-fold lower risk. That's definitely noteworthy.
It is. So you see the pattern. Anti-inflammation, nerve support, antioxidant protection.
Okay, now for something a bit different the sources brought up. Coconut oil.
Yes. Coconut oil. The focus here is on the medium-chain fatty acids, the MCFAs, especially in, the cold-pressed extra virgin kind, maybe organic.
And what's special about these MCFAs?
The liver converts them really quickly into something called ketone bodies.
Ketones. We hear about those with keto diets. How do they help the brain?
Well, they can cross the blood-brain barrier and neurons can use them as fuel. an alternative fuel source.
Alternative to glucose.
Exactly. This is relevant because there's this idea gaining traction, sometimes called type 3 diabetes, that in Alzheimer's, brain cells might struggle to use glucose effectively, like insulin resistance, but in the brain.
So if glucose isn't working well, ketones provide a backup.
That's the concept. It gives the brain another energy option. The sources mentioned Dr. Mary Newport's work. She saw improvements in her husband's Alzheimer's symptoms when she introduced coconut oil.
Interesting anecdotal evidence. Does the research go further?
There's some suggestion, from more recent studies, maybe around 2019, 2020, that coconut oil might even help with clearing those amyloid beta plaques.
The plaques thought to disrupt neuron communication.
Those are the ones. It's still an area of research,
Yeah.
but potentially very significant. And remember, those plaques can start building up decades before symptoms show.
Wow, 20 years even. That really hammers home the need for early proactive thinking.
It absolutely does.
Okay, next up, medicinal mushrooms. Lion's mane and reishi. These sound fascinating.
They really are. Lion's mane Hericium erinaceus is the scientific name. It's known for stimulating something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's like fertilizer for your brain cells. Crucial for neuron survival, growth, making new connections, plasticity. Exercise is another great way to boost BDNF, by the way.
So lion's mane is like neuron fertilizer. No wonder they call it the fungus of regeneration.
Exactly. And there was a study in Japan mentioned where lion's mane supplements seem to improve things like orientation and memory in people with Alzheimer's.
How does it do that?
It's thought to work partly by countering that amyloid beta toxicity we mentioned, plus it has anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects too.
And reishi. It was mentioned alongside lion's mane.
Reishi, Ganoderma lucidum, also seems to support BDNF production, helping existing neurons and maybe promoting new ones. But lion's mane has another trick up its sleeve, nerve growth factor, NGF.
NGF sounds important.
It is. Its discovery won Rita Levi-Montalcini a Nobel Prize. NGF helps repair and maintain neurons, especially their long axons.
And lion's mane stimulates this.
Yeah, through compounds called arenosines and hericinones, found in different parts of the mushroom. And crucially, these compounds seem able to cross the blood-brain barrier.
Meaning they can get into the brain and potentially have a direct effect.
That's the key idea, yes.
Any tips on taking these mushrooms?
The sources suggested taking them with some vitamin C, maybe helps absorption, and you likely need to take them consistently for a while, maybe 20 days or more, to see effects. Quality sourcing matters here too, of course.
Got it. Consistent use, maybe with Vit C. Okay, let's switch to curcumin from turmeric, known for inflammation, right?
Definitely. That's its main claim to fame in neuroprotection. It helps dial down inflammation by influencing a key switch called NF-KB inside cells.
So anti-inflammatory. Anything else?
Potent antioxidant, too. Fights that oxidative stress we talked about. And interestingly, it also seems to stimulate BDNF production.
Like lion's mane. It's interesting how these different natural compounds can hit similar beneficial pathways.
It is, yeah. There's potential synergy there. One thing with curcumin, though, is bioavailability.
Meaning getting it absorbed effectively.
Right. The liver processes it pretty quickly, so the sources suggest maybe small doses more often, or looking for specific formulations designed to boost absorption.
Okay, good practical point. Lastly, the sources touched on melatonin. Usually think of that for sleep.
Right. Its main job is regulating the sleep-wake cycle.
Yeah.
It's a hormone our body makes mostly at night, but production tends to drop as we age.
And people with dementia often have lower levels.
They often do, yeah. And we know poor sleep is definitely linked to worse outcomes in neurodegenerative diseases. Sleep is when the brain does a lot of its housekeeping.
So melatonin isn't just about sleep onset.
Apparently not entirely. Studies suggest it's also protective for cells. It's an antioxidant. And it might even be anti-amyloid, meaning it could potentially reduce the toxicity of that beta amyloid protein.
Wow, multitasking hormone.
Seems so. So supporting healthy melatonin levels and just generally prioritizing good sleep hygiene looks really important for brain health.
Definitely. Now, across all these specific compounds, the sources kept circling back to some broader points, didn't they? It's not just about supplements.
Absolutely not. It has to be a holistic approach. Lifestyle, diet, they're fundamental. Managing stress is huge. One source mentioned a 20-year study linking high cortisol, the stress hormone, to increased Alzheimer's risk.
So things like mindfulness, maybe meditation could actually help protect the brain long term.
That's the implication, yeah.
Yeah.
And reducing refined carbs came up again, too, because of the link to inflammation and that whole insulin resistance picture.
And the other big consistent message was talk to someone qualified.
Crucial.
Yeah.
Essential, really. Before starting any new supplements, vitamins, mushrooms, whatever, talk to your doctor. Talk to a knowledgeable pharmacist, especially if you have other health conditions or take medications. There can be interactions.
Natural doesn't automatically mean harmless for everyone.
Exactly. And as we said, quality of the supplement matters, too.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the main players we discussed based on the sources. Omega-3s, B vitamins, antioxidants, C and E, coconut oil, lion's mane and reishi mushrooms, curcumin, and melatonin.
Right. Each seems to offer potential support through different mechanisms, fighting inflammation, tackling oxidative stress, providing fuel, supporting nerve growth factors.
It paints a picture of multiple ways to potentially support brain health and hopefully reduce the risk of cognitive decline.
It really does offer a range of proactive strategies to consider.
This has been incredibly insightful. It really drives home that we can and probably should be thinking about brain health much earlier. It feels quite empowering, actually.
That's the goal, to feel empowered by this knowledge.
So a final thought for you listening. Thinking about all these interconnected pieces, inflammation, energy, stress, antioxidants, growth factors. What's maybe one small, manageable change you could explore starting today?
Yeah, maybe just pick one area that resonates. Perhaps it's adding some oily fish, maybe looking at stress reduction, or just focusing on better sleep. What's one step you could take to prioritize your cognitive wellness going forward? Something to think about.